What's good, everybody? What's good? What's good? What is happening? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Open Gym. Today, we're just gonna go over the prospects for the Atlanta Hawks coming up in this 2026 NBA draft. So, excuse the excuse the lag, but we are using Fanspo for our draft board. So I'm not really didn't really make like a mock draft. I just did a collection of players that I think Atlanta can be in range of with the pick number 8, pick number 23. So excuse the lags as we kind of get adjusted. Had to refresh the browser. Hopefully it resets fairly shortly. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome into the Open Gym. We'll wait for it to kind of load. Let everybody join in. But welcome in, welcome in. Like I said, we're about to be talking 2026 draft, looking ahead at what the Hawks can do. I'm not really gonna say what they should do. That's what I was about to say. I'm not really into the business of predictions. Um, it is what it is. I'm not gonna expect them to draft anybody, honestly. Um, but when it comes to who I'd like to see play for the Hawks, I mean, I think I could have a decent gauge of who could fit, who might be a good look. So we'll just dive into that, kind of look at the stats. Probably won't get into too many highlights. I don't want to get copyright strikes on the page. So just keep it strictly do a little stat watching or stat or box score watching, however you want to call it. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the Open Gym as we get started. No particular order either, but I do have the guys down here. Um, I only did 14. So I got the guys down here who I think might fit at the 23rd pick, depending on what the Hawks do. And we can chat about what the Hawks could do in multiple ways. Um, with the trade packages, the trade rumors that are swirling around, so we can look at that to kind of go over what the Hawks have available to do. I'm not sure if I have that what you call it, that picture that I need. Maybe I do. Ooh, wrong one. All right. So as we get started, like I said, no particular order, but as we go through, I kind of give my outlook on what the Hawks should do draft wise. Not should do, but what they could do draft wise. So I think with the signing of CJ McCollum recently signed a 1 year deal worth $21 million. So with that being said, it's a 1 year deal. So I don't think CJ is going to be around for too much longer. There's a trade kicker in there, so if he gets traded, he gets like 1.5 million extra dollars. So with that being said, I think I would tend to think the Hawks are going to lean guard if they pick 8. Um, like I said, there's a multitude of things that the Hawks could do with this draft. Last year they made a draft night trade, trading down, and still got their guy that they had their eyes on, Asa Newell. So Ansi Soleil is at the helm. We'll see what happens. We also got to take into account that the Hawks did just make a trade for Aaron Wiggins. So Aaron Wiggins will be an addition to the Hawks roster next year. Maybe, maybe it might be a move to increase their chances at another player. But if not, if Aaron Wiggins is a part of the near future, however long, I'm with it. So that does add another player you got to add. That's another factor into this draft process. So with that being said, I would think that Hawks would go guard. Um, That's kind of why I have the guards up top. I would think the guards are probably going to be, it would be a guard being picked with that 8 pick. If the Hawks keep it, like I said, there's going to be a multiple scenarios available for the Hawks tomorrow night. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do um, pertaining to Kaminga. They've already taken care of one free agent, and that was CJ McCollum. And 2 days after the draft is going to be Jonathan Kaminga's his what you call it his team option deadline. So the Hawks are gonna have to make a decision on the 25th. So in a couple of days they'll decide on Kaminga. I really don't think they're gonna get another forward. Um, I think that spot on the Hawks is already packed out. Um, yeah, I wish. Hold on. See if I can do this real quick. Trying to get this picture, trying to show us the roster and whatnot. I might lag us, but we gonna see. My apologies if it lagged, but taking a look at let's see. There we go. Can y'all see that? Oh, I guess not. We'll get to it. I have it in front of me. I'll show y'all at a later time. So the roster's looking like Nikhil, Dyson, Zach, Jalen, Onyeka. They just signed CJ. Do this. There we go. Look at that ant, boy. I can't have no ants in the mud. Alright, so let's try to increase that real quick. Maybe. Alright, so taking a look at that, if we can drag it down. There we go. Alright, my fault, chat. We good. We got it established. So this is the 2026 offseason roster. If you look at it, like I said, Nikhil Dyson, you got Zach, Jalen, Onyeka. Those are all under contract. Those are all guys under contract. Corey Kisper's under contract. His contract's a little ugly. Not quite sure the specifics on it, but it's not team friendly, so it's not quite easy for the Hawks to get up off of. But like I said, Jonathan Kaminga, he has that team option. They have Asa Newell, and Muhammad Gay's team option is the 29th of June. So they got to decide on Mo Gay as well. Um, So yeah, that's my thinking. Like I said, going back to kind of what I said before, I don't think they're gonna pick a forward. They're kind of stacked at that position. I've heard the rumors, I've heard the rumblings. I don't want to believe them. I think Zach can be a good piece. I don't really think that he's as washed as folks want to make it seem. Has he been? Did he get? Was it his fault he got chosen number one? No. Is he producing like a typical number one pick? No. Does he have the tools to be a good NBA player? I believe so. I don't see a reason to give up on a third year NBA player who's just turned 22, I believe, just turned 21, 22. So I don't see a reason to give up on Zach. But if the Hawks see or don't see a future with Zach, it is what it is. But I don't think that should be the case. And I think given, you know, I believe the front office does its due diligence in hearing what teams have to offer if they're interested in Hawks players. Now, does that mean the Hawks want to ship the Hawks front office want to ship folks out? I don't think so. But I think they're just doing their job, listening to offers, and so I think that gets reported, and it can sometimes get misconstrued by the public into thinking the team just don't want that player. Um, but with the way Hawks can develop young talent, I'm not really worried about Zach, man. Jalen exploded in his like third year, fourth year. So I think there's possibility. I don't think there's reason to give up on a young talent like Zach. So I think he's gonna be around for this next season. If he starts showing progress, I think that'll be great. I think he'll stick around for a while. He'll be in the Hawks plans. Maybe not paid like a former number one pick, but you know, still getting paid a couple million. You're gonna be all right, brother. Um, so with those guys who are under contract for Atlanta, I really think that they should probably either go center or go point guard. I'm not really a big fan of like the combo guards. I think it could work, but I'm not really. There's too much overlap with certain like two-way guys. Um, and whatnot. If they do go combo guard, I'm circling Dyson. I think that is a big factor. Because if they do make decisions where they retain Kaminga, Dyson, that shooting might get a little tricky. Spacing on the floor might look a little crunched with those rotations, depending on what Coach Quinn got up his sleeve. Um, So I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not too much of a numbers guy, so I'm not gonna tell y'all too much about these exceptions. I know they use a trade exception to get Aaron Wiggins. So they used one of these trade exceptions. I believe it was the $11 million one because that came from Luke Cornett or not Luke Cornett, Luke Kennard. So that came from the Luke Kennard trade. So that was pretty much Luke Kennard and V Krejci for Aaron Williams. That's what it turned out to be. So if if they go into draft night not making any more moves, I would tend to say they're gonna go guard. Center, I wouldn't be mad at center, but I just think um what's missing from this is Jock Landale. He is a free agent. I think if they can snag Jock Landale before any other team, I think Jock likes Atlanta. Um, I think the front office likes Jock. I think the city embraced Jock pretty favorably when he dropped 26 that first game, his debut game as a Hawk. So I think that's gonna be, an easy kind of signing, re-signing for Atlanta. He was good center depth. He really changed the game for Atlanta. He was a big part of the 14 game win streak. Um, I don't think he was like the key factor, but him, CJ, obviously Kaminga coming in, those three definitely helped Atlanta out. like I said, I don't think you can definitely be definitive on they're gonna keep around and who they're gonna let, maybe go, maybe make trades with. I think you can maybe say Gabe Vincent might let him walk. Tony Bradley probably gonna let him walk. Christian Coloco probably gonna let him walk. Keaton more than likely gonna let Keaton Wallace go, even though Keaton was a pretty, wasn't necessarily a fan favorite, but you know, locker room guy. Worked his way from the G League. So really just depends on the decisions that the front office is going to make um, regarding who they're gonna keep around. And I think maybe after the draft, that's gonna dictate who they are gonna keep around. Um, and we could go through the rumors and reports on the trades, but I don't really want to because it's just smoke right now. You can't really believe anything that you kind of see at the moment. So you have to kind of just wait till things play out, and that's really why I've kind of waited to do one of these streams because I don't really like anticipating, predicting nothing. It's not that I don't want my take to go cold. I just don't want to be, being a horse with a dead stick. Because if what I'm saying don't happen, yeah, I'm not gonna be the one to say I'm right or hey, I need this to happen or I called it. If I call it, cool. It happens sometimes. Um, but yeah, looking at this roster sheet, they got 164 million to spend. I believe what's his name just got 21 million of that. So that will put them close. I believe it's like the first apron or something. I'm not quite sure. So, like I said again, I'm not a big numbers guy. I don't. Jesus. I don't know what it's gonna take to sign certain guys, but that's why I'm not gonna predict. Um, what they should do. I don't even know if it could work financially. So, but I will say I'm not a real big like ship these guys out. But hey, Corey Kispert with that contract wouldn't be mad if they packaged him up. The players that I would be sick to see go is Zach and J.K. Seeing Zach and Jonathan Kuminga go would hurt because I think those two players have a future on this team. I think they could mesh well um, with the bench unit. Those could easily be your 6, 7 guys. Maybe even Jonathan Kuminga could sneak into the starting lineup. Maybe at the 4, Jalen play, plays the 3, maybe first 10, 15 minutes. Who knows? I'm not the coach, so I'm not going to talk about rotations right now. So let's switch this back real quick. Get back to looking at the draft board real quick. So talk about these draft picks. Yeah, yeah, my fault if it you know, just want to take over the whole screen, don't you? It's gonna take a minute, ain't it? I hate this shit, bro. There we go. So as we get back adjusted real quick. So I kind of took into account who would not be there and probably who would be there for Atlanta's selection too. Um, Atlanta has pick number 8 and 23. Do I believe they're gonna be making Jesus? We're all over the place. There we go. Finally. Do I think they'll be making both picks? If you were to ask me, I don't think so. But Who knows? Who knows? Oh my god, bro. I need to fuck around and lock that shit. Shit running up like it's on dial up. Sheesh. Alright, there we go. We good. So like I said, I was really going off who I thought the Hawks would have available there. So first, we're gonna talk about Keen Walker. Um, and I'm gonna be real. I'm not really much of a college basketball watcher. So when it comes time for the draft, and I listen to the reporters, the podcasters, I read the articles, the reports, the mock drafts. I just look at the players, who are mocked to Atlanta and kind of see what they're talking about. Um, don't really watch full games either. I'm just really watching all of their highlights. 50-minute videos. Getting distracted throughout most of them, but I will say I make it through them. But the most intriguing prospect that I think Atlanta could get now, this is probably the prospect that's not going to get to Atlanta, unfortunately. Um, in the early stages, this was somebody that was rumored to maybe fall in that range, but it looks like teams above Atlanta are kind of falling in love with Keaton. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went early. So probably won't talk about him too much. Um, but Keaton's 19 years old, was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Um, not really coming into this college season like with accolades. He was like a 3-star recruit, but he turned out to be a really really good player for Illinois. Um, he was up there with Stojakovic's son. They had a really good team. Obviously made it to the Final Four. But yeah, Keaton Walker being 19 years old, 6'5", averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 44% field goal, 39% 3-point field goal percentage. So I mean, pretty decent for a guard. Not really like, I don't really think there's a typical point guard in this draft. I mean, there is, but a traditional point guard, I should say. Don't really think there's too many of those in this draft. So, um, with that being said, I don't think that would fill it. I don't think there's too many players that fill Atlanta's like need for a traditional point guard, um, which kind of is perfect somewhat because I feel like this draft is full of those somewhat tweeners, those guards who can play two positions. They can play off ball very well, and I think that's Keaton Wagler. He kind of showcased that somewhat in his year with Illinois, having other guys around him. So I think that works for a lot of players' advantage, not being like the guy, just being a guy on a team. And I think Keaton Wagler was one of those. Not really like a huge highlight player, but he is really productive, somewhat efficient, um, kind of 1-2 guard. So whichever team gets him will be interesting, but I don't think the Hawks are going to be able to snag Keem Walker, which is unfortunate. That was probably going to be like I have him at my number one. He was the most intriguing fit for Atlanta, I think, with the defense that Atlanta has to offer with Dyson, Nikhil. Um, if they keep Kaminga, if they keep Zach, I think the with those guys, the weaknesses of some of these guards will kind of be hidden because defense isn't necessarily some of these strongest assets. It's not the strongest tendencies for some of these guys. All these guys can play defense. They're about 6'4" and up, which is a benefit to them. Uh, I know some people were kind of making a big ordeal about Keenan Wallace or Keenan Wagler's measurements at the draft, not necessarily having the typical measurements of a 6'6" guy, but I'm not really buying too much into that. But I think Keaton's gonna be productive anywhere he goes. Unfortunately, I think he is gonna get snagged before Atlanta will be able to choose him with that eighth pick. But it will be interesting to see that type of build around Nikhil Dyson, um, Jalen Onyeka. I think anybody who can get the ball downhill is gonna fit well, and I think a lot of these guards that I have up top fit that um, kind of build. So that archetype. That's what I'm trying to say. That archetype. So this is probably everybody has Kingston mocked in that range, about 7 to 8, 6 to 8. So this is probably the most likely, I would think, because I do think of all the guards, I'll just let y'all know. I think Keen's gonna go before Atlanta has that pick. Acuff is definitely going before. Michael Brown would probably be going before. So those are three. Obviously Peterson. Um, so with that being said, who is it? It's Washington, um, Utah, Grizz, Chicago. Who's five? The Clippers. Who's five? But anyway, yeah, I think Clippers are five, if I'm not mistaken. Like somebody in Sacramento, and then Atlanta. But with that being said, I think uh, I think those three guards are definitely gonna be off the board by the time Atlanta has their pick. Until Atlanta's on the clock, so I'd still like to talk about them a little bit, but um, you know, probably won't get too much into them. But I think Kingston Flemings might be the selection that Atlanta is going with. He averaged 16 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds on 47% field goal percentage. Um, Shot 38% from three. Like I said, I'm not really gonna do a deep dive on any of these guys. Pretty much, this is just summing up what mock drafts have said, summing up what reports have said. What Atlanta is leaning towards. Atlanta has been really quiet, so they haven't really had anything leak out about prospects, about who they're looking at. Um, really, I get a lot of my information from Brad Rowland, Locked On Hawks. He does a really good job at kind of, you know, just keeping us in tune of what the front office is thinking about, what the rumblings mean, what the if they're real or if they're kind of just smoke being deployed by teams, maybe Atlanta themselves. But back to this draft board, I think Kingston Flemings will be a good selection for the Hawks because, like I said, anybody who can get the ball downhill is going to be a good addition. And you know, you can bring up you know somebody not being terribly efficient from three, not being able to finish at the rim. But I don't think I think it's too early for it to be definite. I don't think. I mean, you could show signs this early, but I think within the right system, you could anybody is going to be able to flourish from this draft. So I think fit is definitely important aspect for these players, not necessarily for the teams drafting them, but for the players, it's going to be important to go to a team that they just fit. And I think a lot of these guys who I have up top, guard wise, will be able to fit Atlanta fairly easily because they do have a need for depth at the guard position. They need somebody who is able to get a bucket. I think a lot of these guards are able to do that. I think Kingston is one of those guards. Like I said, he shot 47% from the field, 38% from the three, 84 from the free throw line. Only had 3.5 free throw attempts, so you would like to see that increase, especially from a guard. But being 6'4", 190, pretty decent measurements there. Um, I wouldn't be opposed. I watched highlights on Kingston. He definitely gets downhill. Would definitely fit the system. I think probably one of my top passers out of all these guys. Probably not the best, but he's able to drive, kick, all that good stuff. Find the open man, initiate offense. So it would be good to see Kingston. Also, he's not a small guard, and I'm not bashing on small guards, but I would like to see Atlanta kind of move on from that dynamic of relying on somebody who's 6'3", who just has a great offense. No shade to Trey because I loved those years watching Trey Young, but um, yeah, I would just like to see Atlanta kind of move on and kind of embrace the the game that they've kind of they're headed to now. Um, but as we move on, I think another prospect that we can look at is Michael Brown. Like I said, he might be off the board by the time Atlanta has their pick. By the time Atlanta's on the clock, he might not be there. But Michael Brown Jr. is another player. He's 20 years old, 6'5", 190, average 18 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 41% from the field. Um, I don't have his 3 point, but the only thing that worries me is his injuries, his back injury. But I mean, if his medicals from the draft say he's good, bro, he's probably good. So I'll let the doctors kind of worry about that. But another player that can initiate, another player that would fit Atlanta, I think very well. Um, Defense isn't the strongest suit from what I've heard, but I'm not really worried about that. All ACC, all freshman team. So he shows that he is, he got the accolades to be a top pick. But it would be interesting to see Michael, his game, how he fits with, like I said, Dyson Nikhil. I think that backcourt would be pretty lethal if he finds that jump shot in the league. Um, I think he would be kind of a sleeper for like rookie of the year type thing. Um, I don't think these guys, he's not fairly explosive. I think Kingston might be the most explosive, most athletic. But all these guys have a good feel for the game, scoring, passing. I wouldn't say necessarily rebounding for these guards, but offense seems to be somewhat polished for you know lottery level talent. So it'd be interesting to see what the Hawks decide to do because I think if they do go, players like Kingston or Michael, they'd be really good fits. Same thing with LeBaron Fallon. Looking at his stats, um, kind of same thing: 22 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. So the ability to initiate is there. 6'4", like I said with these other ones. Defense not the strongest. I think these guys are probably a little bit better defensively. I think he kind of let off the brakes from what I've heard his sophomore year to kind of really focus and lock in and show teams that he can be that guy. So it was impressive what he did at Alabama. 22 points on 50% from the field. So he can finish at the rim very well. He can get downhill. He seems to be explosive. Not necessarily the most athletic, but he's definitely explosive. Um, has a good, if I'm not mistaken, has a good mid range. Has an all right three. 79% from the free throw line, 6 free throw attempts. So he definitely gets to the line enough. 39% from the 3 point line. So pretty decent. I would say average. Shit, average. No, that's over 40% from the for three. Come on, man, that's pretty nice. So LeBaron, I wouldn't be mad if the Hawks go 8 with LeBaron. Um, I really don't think they're gonna take number 23. I'm not gonna cap to y'all, but number 8, I think would definitely fit LeBaron. It would be high. It would be high compared to the mock drafts. Um, Wait, hold on. What just happened? Minnesota is sending Julius Randle. Oh my God. What? Minnesota is sending Julius Randle and the number 28 pick in the NBA draft to Brooklyn in a three-team trade that sends Nick Claxton to the Bulls. The Timberwolves will acquire Brooklyn's number 33 pick for Randle and number 28. Wow. God damn, Nick Claxton going to the Bulls. Wow. 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 Julius Randle up out of there. Well, chat, it's gonna be active. It's gonna be active, chat. So back to the Hawks. Back to the Hawks. LeBaron, he showed really great improvement that second year in college. Um, so watching his highlights, it was pretty impressive. I actually watched the game with I think they were playing Georgia, maybe UT. Oh, it was interesting. It was definitely interesting to see him and his the other guard that was there. I'm not quite like I said. I don't really watch college basketball. I just go over the highlights of who Atlanta can't take. But LeBaron would be pretty good, pretty interesting prospect. He would fit, I think, well too. I think of these guards, my favorite would probably be probably be my Kel. If we're being honest, it'd probably be Michael, even though the injury worries. But I think he'd be all right. But LeBaron would be a good selection at 8 for Atlanta. I don't think Darius Acuff is going to be there just straight up. So we're not going to look at Darius Acuff, even though I think he's probably the best guard in the draft. He's probably the best point guard other than De'Aaron Peterson. Um, so besides the top 3 or top 4, I think Acuff is probably right there on that, like tier 2 if you want to go by tiers. Um, but then we're going to get into what some might deem controversial. I would not be mad if the Hawks just go a Daymar at number 8. Um, really, okay, I'm kind of group these guys together, but a Daymar, I think 8 would be way too high for Chris Sinek. Sinek. It would be way too high for Chris Sinek, but I wouldn't be mad if they go Chris Sinek at like 23 if they do keep that pick. Um, Ruben Chinilu, I'm not quite sure. I just kind of threw him in, to be honest. Um, Dalen Swain, I've heard rumors that the Hawks are pretty high on Dalen Swain, so I kind of threw him in there for that reason. But I'm not too like sold on that being a big selection. 6'8", probably 6'9". But Henry Vassier, he's 7'2". That's why I threw that mug in there. Because I'm gonna be honest, I really don't think Atlanta's gonna go big in this draft. And if they do, I think it's gonna be these two right here. I think it'll be these two if they go big. Um, and that's if they don't pick a Daymar at pick 8. I I doubt they're gonna go on this Steinbach. I know Paulie told me how to pronounce his name, so my fault, Paulie, if I'm mispronouncing your guy's name. Um, but yeah, I think a Daymar would probably be the only big that'll be all right with selecting at with that 8th pick. 7'3", he has a 9'9" standing reach, so I really find it hard for him not to be productive. Might take a year or two for him to get his legs up under him in the league, and kind of get used to the physicality of what the NBA has to offer. But I think he would definitely be a game changer for the Hawks. Um, Especially since they got CJ for a year, and if they keep, um, they got Aaron Wiggins, and if they keep Zach, he'd be a good addition on the wing to space the floor. I don't know what it would look like for Kaminga. Kisper might get moved because yeah, kind of clogs up the floor. Um, but it would definitely change the way the Hawks have to play, and it could be for the better, could be for the worse. For the adjustment time. Um, I don't want to draft nobody that's gonna kind of clog things up and not take us a step back, but kind of slow us up. So if a day is drafted, I wouldn't be mad at him having that backup role. Say, like I said, Jock Lando comes back on a team friendly deal. Um, Not saying I want him to get his money, but on a deal that the Hawks can make work. Um, I wouldn't be mad if Ademar was pick number 8 and they kind of used him as that backup and kind of slowly integrated him into NBA role, whether it be a rotation player at first or a starter, kind of later in the year. Um, However that works, I wouldn't be mad at him being a solid backup for the meantime between time. Because I really don't think there's too many bigs in this draft that move the needle other than Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson. I think those two are kind of solidified top five. I don't foresee them dropping out by any means. Um, but yeah, some of these Cam Carr, depending on what the Hawks do, um, I wouldn't be mad if the Hawks selected Cam Carr. He was he bounced around in his college career, played at UT, went to Baylor, and had a kind of breakout year at Baylor this year. Had 18, 2 assists, 5 rebounds on 49% from the field. So he seems like a really solid wing player. I watched that scrimmage game, the NBA draft combine scrimmage with Cam Carr. He dropped like 38. He was hooping, getting downhill, and that's the main thing the Hawks need. Somebody that gets downhill who can handle the rock, get to their shot, and dish the ball when needed. I don't think he's the best passer at all, but if that's something you could work on, being somebody who can operate in the NBA offense, um, I wouldn't be mad if the Hawks took Cam with that 23rd pick if they do end up keeping that 23rd pick and they don't use it to trade up or trade down. Um, but yeah, I think there's this. I guess it would be like a third tier for me. First tier would be the guards, who I think Atlanta's gonna take. Second tier would be like these bigs right here, who I think Atlanta might take some flyers on if they move up from that 23rd pick. Hannes Steinbach might be there. Dame Mara might still be on the board. Um, and then kind of the third tier for me are these guys right here. Do I think Atlanta could choose Braden Burns at number 8? They could, but I don't necessarily think so. I think they might be trying to increase somebody's panic that's a little bit ahead of them with that 23rd pick. But he would be a good addition for the Hawks, man. I think a lot of these guards who are 6'4", 6'5" would fit right in, who can handle the ball. Um, Not the greatest facilitator, initiator, but he has a great shot. He can play downhill, get to the basket. He got 16 points, 2 assists, 4 rebounds on 49% from the field. So I wouldn't be mad at Braden Burry's selection if the Hawks picked him 8. I wouldn't be mad. Do I think that's a little high for him? Maybe. Everybody has him 10 and 9. So do I think that's insane? No. But it'd be interesting to see how it fit. They have him listed as a shooting guard. I don't really know um, if these are like solidified. Can he play point guard? I think Hawks have a lot of those players who are like, yeah, he can play point guard. So I would like them to get somebody who's like, yes, he's a point guard, but he's great at off ball. That's why I think a lot of these, like Keen Wagler, I think he's looked at more of a point guard than a shooting guard. He's just shooting guard size. Kind of same thing with Braden Burries, maybe. So yeah, like I said, these are probably going to be my tier three guys. Kind of more so thinking like if Atlanta can trade up from the 23 pick. I guess this would be like tier four. Trade up from the 23 pick. If they still take the 8 pick, maybe ship the 8 pick out. I don't know. Something of that nature. But guys like Chris Sinek, I think he would be pretty intriguing for the Hawks. The way, like I said, the Hawks farm system is with the Skyhawks, let him develop in the G League like they did Asa Newell and see what they get from there. He's 6'11". We'll take a look at Chris Sinek. 6'11", 240, 19 years old. Stats aren't like popping off the page. 9.7 rebounds. But do I think the development could be there? Absolutely. Um, he was playing with Kingston, and so I think Atlanta has options. And I think Chris Neck would be a pretty good option. 6'11" would definitely kind of solve that height issue. He's 19 years old. Might grow, another couple inches. So might mess around, be 7 foot by the end of his growing period. Usually they're done growing. Guys are done growing around 20ish, 21. So, um, he would just be interesting to see, like I said, not stash really, but give him time in the G League to sharpen his skills. I think he would be a special player for the Hawks in a year or two, and that's that's asking a lot of Hawks fans to wait a year or two for somebody to develop. Because I know a lot of Hawks fans are itching for success right now, especially after the kind of run at the end of the season that we had. It kind of got Hawks fans hyped to what could be. So I don't think a lot of people would be looking for that. I don't even think the Hawks might be, but if that's the direction they want to go to, keeping both those picks, kind of doubling up and just trying to win big on young talent, I wouldn't be mad at that. Another player, Ibuka Okori, is another player I think if they do trade up from that 23rd pick, I think Ibuka Okori would not be bad at all selection. Kind of small on the smaller end height wise, 6'2", but he gets the job done. 23 points. Not really the highest assists, but gets the job done. He can score the basketball. Stanford was not that great, so he didn't have nobody to pass to. So I don't blame the young man. 23 points though. 19 years old, 6'2". Um, Not really too familiar with his game. Didn't watch too much of his highlights. But just from overall what I've heard and what I have seen, he would be pretty intriguing. Maybe not with the eighth pick, but like I said, if they trade up, if he falls to 23, would be perfectly fine with Atlanta selecting Ibuka Okori. Even though if they pick guard at 8, I wouldn't be mad at them, doubling up. But but really that's it. Ruben Chinelu, I've watched his tape early, like soon as the Hawks got eliminated. I wouldn't be mad at that just because he's huge, not as polished. 10 points, 11 rebounds. Um, Second round pick, I think they have pick number 50, I believe. Yeah, 57. So if he's there, I wouldn't be mad if the Hawks, swiped him. He's 6'10". I'm not sure about his other um, measurements, but from the tape, seems to be really athletic, can go up and rebound with the best of them in college basketball. So I think Ruben Chinelu would be a good option later in the draft for Atlanta, maybe for that 57th pick if he's still around, or if they trade it down from 23, Wouldn't be mad if they kind of took a flyer on Chinny Lou if they used pick number 8 to trade for somebody or use the pick to grab one of these guys or maybe somebody that fell from the top 5, top 6. So it would be interesting. I've heard a lot about Daniel Swain, but I'm not too intrigued. 6'8", 6'9", forward. It just seems redundant. Not really sure if that's gonna be the Hawks selection. If they use pick number 23 and Henry Vassir, another 7-footer. That's really it. 17 points, 8 rebounds. Not really the greatest like athlete, not the quickest either, but can get the job done. A 7-footer, I wouldn't be mad at that. But yeah, like I said, Hawks have pick number 8 and 23, and there's a multitude of options that they could do. They could go with. Really, it's just gonna depend on uh, what they can get if they get any type of like trade calls. It'll be interesting to see what they do in that aspect. But other than that, I really don't have any predictions per se. But I do think I could say that I would like to see Atlanta maybe go guard. And I know I've been repetitive about that. But only reasons because if they go guard, I think they'll be able to figure it out with JK and be able to retain Kaminga because I don't see the need to sell high on guys that helped us get the job done. And I think, if things go sour, always an opportunity to maybe go another route. But from what it's looking like, I think guys really bought in at the end of the year, last year, and you can take that um, and really build on that in all honesty. Do I think it's gonna be a championship year next year? I don't think so, but I think it's gonna be another year where you can use it as a stepping stone to really good years. Um, I think the front office has a good gauge on what to do as well. I don't think they're just gonna, I don't think they're just dicking around, dog. I really don't. I really think they're kind of focused and on their goal and the vision that they have. And I think it's panning out somewhat. Majority, it seems to be panning out. So I just gotta trust the vision, dog. I just gotta trust the vision. With the addition of Aaron Wiggins, CJ re-signed. Um, like I said, I just gotta trust the vision of Ansi Soleil and his staff. So I don't really have any. Atlanta should do this. They have to do that. I don't have any too many of those takes, but it's really just about best player available and best offer available too. If somebody offers you the house for one of your players, anybody except Jalen, Dyson, I would like to say Zach. But if somebody gonna offer the house for Zach, you just gotta gotta detach yourself. But I think that's really I think that's it, man. I really don't think Atlanta's shopping too much of their players. Maybe the picks, but I think if anybody, Atlanta would be interested to get off the Corey Kispert contract because it seems like the way Ansi Soleil operates, he does kind of look at the future a lot of the time. So a lot of the moves he makes are somewhat future facing. So it'd be interesting to see if like that has anything to do with Ricochet. Um, I don't think Ricochet was Ansi Soleil's pick. I think he was around, but I don't think he was the guy that made the pick. But I just think Ansi has a vision. Him and Quinn are on a good understanding. And you could say Quinn and Ricochet probably beefing with their playing time, but who knows, man? We're not in those circles of hey man, we're not gonna utilize you this series, or just stay focused, develop this, and you'll be able to get that PT. We don't know those conversations, so I'm not gonna sit here and act like I do. I'm not gonna act like I know Quinn's thought process because Quinn it could be something that we don't necessarily think of, and it could be what we all are thinking. That man just does not like Ricochet. So I think in the end it will pan out, but yeah, it's not too much to necessarily like predict this or like it's not too much intel saying what the Hawks are gonna do. Um, and as a Hawks fan, it kind of sucks. You kind of want to gauge what your team is interested in doing, but Hawks are kind of like keep it under tight wraps what they want to do. So, um, I think with all the information that we've heard from Brad Rowland, all the other talking heads that don't necessarily watch the Hawks, but they report on the draft. Um, Not saying that's Brad Rowland. Brad Rowland is very knowledgeable. That's really where I get all my information is locked on the Hawks. Regarding the Hawks, as official over there. You don't got to worry about somebody that don't know what they're talking about. Brad Rowland knows what he's talking about. So other than that, I just kind of like to play it by ear. Don't really like to get my hopes up for anybody specific, especially when you don't have a top five, top two pick. Honestly, it's really tough because the slim pickings after the top five anywhere in any draft. Really, you kind of have to get lucky after the fifth pick, and sometimes people don't even get lucky with the top five pick. So, but yeah, with that being said, we just gotta wait till tomorrow, chat. We have to wait till tomorrow. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens just throughout the league. Supposedly, we're gonna get a Giannis deal in the next about 12 hours. Yeah, about 12, 14 hours. So we're gonna see what the East is looking like next year. If Giannis does get moved, I don't think it's gonna be too much of a threat, honestly. But yeah, tomorrow will indicate a lot, I believe, for the Hawks. Man, is it gonna be a brand new future, or is it just gonna be a couple changes here and there? Um, and I think we'll be able to kind of get a good outline of what's gonna happen. Um, all right, get ready, everybody. Get ready, Hawks fans, because I think it's going to be. I think it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to say the least. To say the least. It'll be interesting, dog. It'll be interesting. Um, it's gonna be moves all over the league, not just for Atlanta, but all over the league. It's gonna be interesting. But with that being said, chat, I'm gonna sign off for the night. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Everybody on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, I greatly appreciate y'all. We will be live. We will be doing a watch along. We're not gonna have all these lags and whatnot. We're gonna be a little smoother, I promise. So we will be live tomorrow at when is the draft at 8 o'clock? It is at was that 7 p.m.? I thought that joint was at 8 o'clock. Hold on. This shit gonna take forever. Yeah, it begins at 8. Okay, cool. 8 p.m. Eastern time, chat. We'll be live 8 p.m. Eastern time to watch along, see what the Hawks do, see what the rest of the league does, see where Giannis lands if the trade happens before or during the draft. See what moves are made during the draft. That's the most exciting time of the offseason, in my opinion. That and when free agency starts. So draft moves will be made, chat. Moves will be made, and we will be here to go over them all, especially whatever the Hawks do. So until tomorrow, tomorrow's the big day, chat. 8 p.m. Eastern time, we will be live in the open gym. I greatly appreciate everybody that tapped in tonight to kind of go over what we were thinking. Wasn't really too much detail. I'm not really too much of a detail guy when it comes to it. I'm just more of a do you see the vision guy. You can see the vision. Um, so hopefully y'all saw the vision with my guards going up top, maybe train that 23rd pick. Maybe we'll have a better layout tomorrow when it actually happens. So I'll see y'all tomorrow for the NBA draft, and we will be ready, locked, and loaded at 8 p.m. Eastern time. No technical issues, unlike these past couple streams. But we will be live, hopefully, no problems tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I hopefully will see everybody there. I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight, and we will see y'all tomorrow. Peace.